Chris Jericho back again.
Stop trying to be so organized. You're like 3, 2, 1, blah, blah, blah.
Well, I mean, this is taped, Chris.
I know. No,
so
no,
that's
you never say that. You say it's live.
Hey, the 3, 2, 1, you know what it's for?
What?
It's for the editors, so they know when to stop and start the tape.
See, you're teaching me stuff now. Maybe I can be your intern and find some water. It's like we had some jackass go find water, and then Mortman's like, well, he doesn't need water. Forget it. We'll start. I'm so parched I can barely talk. So he's like, fuck Jericho and no water for me. And so now I don't have any water.
Well, now we have an intern and a former intern trying to find your water. So we're actually utilizing quite a bit of resources.
How many
in this endeavor.
interns does it take to find a glass of water?
Exactly. 10.
That's all right. I don't need any anyways, according to Doug Mortman.
All right. So
the tyrant of the show.
This is true. Rock star Chris Jericho, musical genius. The band Fozzy, of course. FozzyRock.com. They were in my neck of the woods. I didn't even know about it, but I'm all over the map. And you know what? I love your band. I would have come if I knew you guys were in Patchogue, Long Island, New York yesterday. But tonight, BB King's Dave, I know you're going to be there, 7 p.m. doors. Chris, how has the tour been? Give us the whole rundown. And I hear you're actually in a tour bus with the bands that are on tour. So how is that going?
Yeah, it's something that happens quite often, actually. You do what's called a bus share, where you just, it's like their band, our band, and the crew. But it's not as crazy as you think, because the buses are just amazing. Like 15 bunk buses with like a big lounge in the front, big lounge in the back. The lounge pops open when you're parked. There's a shower in it and all that sort of stuff. So
Sweet.
it's a cool way to travel. It's a different way of going than it is when you're in the WWE, where you fly into a town, then rent your own car, then drive your own car, then try and find a place to stay, and this, that, and the other thing. When you're on tour, you just get on the bus and go. You wake up in town, whatever, and you're there. So it's kind of a cool way to go. But the tour's been going great. We just came back from Europe. We were over there for a month and did a bunch of shows in Europe, a bunch of shows in the UK. It was like 7 countries, I think, total. And then had a couple more weeks off, and now we're on this tour with Saxon, which is really cool, touring across Canada and across the States for the next 5 weeks. The last night was the first show in Patchogue, which I just figured out how to pronounce today. I was like, Patchogue. Our manager's from Atlanta. He's like, Patchakoogie. So anyways, it was whenever you start a tour, it's like when you start a loop wrestling. If if let's say it's me and you wrestling, the first match is always a little bit of kind of feeling it out. Some things work, some things don't. Do it what Steve Austin used to say, get the junk out of your system. Yeah. And it's the same way when you first start out a tour. The first couple shows, there's usually behind the scenes things, technical things that are a little bit rocky, and as the tour goes on, you get it locked down. But the shows are still great. There's just like this guitar went out of tune, or this changeover wasn't quick enough, or this segue wasn't good enough. But we're excited, man. It's a great place to start. We always consider New York to be kind of our backyard in the States. We've played more shows here than anywhere in New York City, and we're excited to be playing BB King's again, man. It's a great venue. It's funny. Last night I got in, and my hotel is right across the street from BB's, and there's the sign, the big marquee is like Saxon Fozzy, and took a picture of it, and save it, because you can never take that stuff for granted. You know what I mean? It's like I've been lucky enough to have these 2 goals of my life come true, but you never forget, like, this is so cool as a fan to also be doing this. I mean, to be having our name in lights, in Manhattan and Times Square. With a band that we grew up listening to. It's a pretty cool experience.
So you were on the tour bus going, where were you in 79?
Yeah, they played that last night, and I was just like, yes! When I was 15, I wanted one thing for Christmas, the Saxon Crusader record. And that was the only present I asked for, and I got it. And to now, here we are playing with them.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it was cool. It was cool to watch them. And the thing about them, too, is this is not like a nostalgia thing. Like, their newer material is just as good as the older stuff. So they're still like a living, breathing, vibrant rock and roll band. And, our mission is to go out there and kick their ass. It's like when you're wrestling, thank you. When you are the match before main event, you want to make sure that people go, that should have been the main event. And that's the same thing with this tour. We want people to walk away going, Fozzy should have been on last. And I'm sure then they see us play and go, well, now we have to be extra crazy to make sure that, we don't get overthrown by this upstart band, young band. So it's a real competition in a good way. It's healthy competition when you're on tour like this.
Jericho's still stealing the show, Dave.
Yeah, I would imagine,
man.
most of the fans are probably there to see Fozzy. Taking nothing away from Saxon, but I would say most of the fans are probably there to see Fozzy.
It's funny because we did a couple co-headlining tours in Europe over this past year, one with Drowning Pool and one with Soil. And both those bands had good name value in Europe, but of course that's our place. But both times we decided that we'll go on second, like the first band, then we'll go on second, then they'll go on after us. And we'll both play the same amount of time, 60 minutes and 60 minutes. And halfway through both the tours, both those bands were like, why are we going on after you? We can't follow it. Half the crowd is leaving, the crowd's not into it as much.
Wow.
But that's kind of the strategy. It's like, because the way we look at it is all of their fans have to watch us if we're on second. If we go on last, then the people that came just to see them will leave when we're done, or when they're done. So the Saxon thing is a little bit different because they're a little bit more of a bigger band overseas. They're legendary, obviously. But there's a good amount of people that are coming to see us. And last night they were going crazy the whole time, and we expect the same tonight. So it's cool. We would never come out and say that, but if people are coming to see us, then we'll make sure to give them their money's worth. And if people don't know who we are that are Saxon fans, we'll make sure that they leave as Fozzy fans.
Nice.
What's more grueling, a pro wrestling tour or a music tour?
Do you mind if I take a sip of water?
Of course.
Okay, thanks.
Of course. I mean, you demanded the water.
Tyrant of the airwaves. Yeah, it was in my contract, damn it.
It's in the rider.
Yeah, exactly. What's more grueling? Both.
And does being the front man of a band make the music side more grueling for you and more thought?
Our like, we don't have dragons flying from the ceiling or bombs going off. We are the show, and we take great pride. We've built up a reputation as being a very entertaining, very good live band, and that's because we're very energetic on stage. We demand a lot of crowd participation, and we get it. Our fans are getting put through the ringer, but so are we. Like every show, you're just covered in sweat, drenched in sweat, to the point where there was a couple of gigs we just played in Europe where it was gross. Like I remember coming off the stage in London and just squeezing my shirt and filling up this big cup full of sweat. It's so like, and you just feel like you jumped in a swimming pool. But that's because
Did you put it on eBay?
Yeah, I could. Yeah, I'm just gonna sell Jericho's sweat, bottle it, Jericho's DNA.
Jera sweat.
Jera sweat. So I mean, the point is that it's very, when you're doing a match, you stop and start. There's a big opening spot, then you take your time, get the heat or sell, and you're kind of ebbing and flowing. If you're 30 minutes, at the end of it, you're going to feel it. And it's a lot more hard-hitting. Obviously, you're taking big bumps, but there's also time to take a breather within the match. With Fozzy, it's 30 minutes, run and gun. And there's times during the set where I have a mic stand that I got specifically made that's got some strength to it, because sometimes you feel a little dizzy. If it's really hot, and you hit a high scream, or you're doing a lot of jumping or whatever it is, you got to kind of hold on to that mic stand to kind of get rid of the dizzy feeling. So they're both grueling in different ways. Obviously, WWE is more hard-hitting on your body,
sure,
but I think you lose more weight and get in better shape from doing the Fozzy shows because it's just bam, 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 and you're done,
What's the peace sells in your set? Like, what's your creeping death? What's the one that gets the crowd going?
Well, Sandpaper was a huge hit for us this year, and so whenever that gets played, people are really into it. God Pounds His Nails is great because it's a real fan involvement song, but the one that we close the show out is called Blood Happens, which is a real thrashy blast beat. That one usually 9 times out of 10 gets the circle pits and the crowd surfing and the stage diving, that sort of stuff. If venues allow stage diving, they're few and far between nowadays. But that's kind of the one that we end off with. It's just pure chaos and craziness.
I was gonna say I'm gonna try that tonight. Like, I'm always into the mosh, but I'm gonna try to do. I've never done the stage dive. I tried once at a Testament show, almost broke my leg. Tonight I'm gonna do it.
Dave,
there's a new. Go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say we've had broken bones in the family recently.
There you go.
So
Yes.
all I'm saying is, please stay healthy. I'm just asking you. Don't do anything stupid.
I make.
All right.
You're telling me that?
Now,
I make no
there's
promises.
a new thing now that's happening overseas. It's called the Wall of Death, which is where the fans line up on like fans on one side and fans on the other. There's a big open space, like the parting of the Red Sea, and then everybody just gets gunned up and they run as fast as they can and kind of smash into each other. So maybe you could start a wall of death tonight.
I could do that, man. I could do that.
No.
Being divorced twice, man, I can stand some
right.
pain.
Don't do
Wall of
that.
Dave tonight at BB King's. Come see it.
I was waiting to see if it was going to be LaGreca or myself that was going to transition into wrestling. I figured it was going to be me, so let's have
That's all right.
it.
You do it. You guys do a good job.
You know where we got to go with this. JR, retired. Let's take away the backstage politics and all the rumors that are going on, and let's just talk about Jim for a second. You had a great tweet, how instrumental he was at the beginning of your career and how he helped you. Just give us some memories about the great Jim Ross as the on-air voice that would put over wrestlers and wrestling, and the person backstage helping wrestlers.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jim Ross to me is cliche to say, but it's the truth. Best wrestling announcer of all time. And when they took him off the air, I think there's a real attitude in WWE that you have to constantly be planning for the future, which I agree with. But there's also certain things like Jim Ross as an announcer. It's like John Madden or Don Cherry. They're just the best at what they do. Bob Cole on Hockey Night in Canada for our northern fans. Old, look old, are old, but still it's a certain voice that you have that to this day is the voice for wrestling. And Jim Ross is that voice. The same thing with Howard Finkel as an announcer. They've never found a replacement for Howard Finkel, ever. They've got some good ones, but they've never found, to me, it's like Gene Okerlund as an interviewer. I'll never, ever hear a better voice than his. And I felt that about Jim Ross, and I thought they kind of, sent him out to pasture a little bit earlier, but there's been fireworks between Jim and Vince for years. That's just the way it is. But besides that, beyond the announcing, as he was the head of talent relations when I started talking to the WWE back in '99, and he was pretty much, him and Vince Russo were the guys that were instrumental in bringing me in. 2 months after, and they gave me a hell of a deal too. I'm sure obviously Vince has to approve it, but JR was definitely spearheading it and making sure that it went through. He took recruiting very seriously. It was like an NFL team for him. He went out there and found a lot of the best guys that have ever worked in this business, and he took great pride in that. And he when Vince Russo left 2 months after I got to the WWE, he was kind of like my last supporter, and there was 99% of people that didn't like what I was doing, and some of that was because of who I was, and some of that was because of just their perceptions or whatever. But JR was always never turned on me. So I always remembered that, he never gave up on me and always stood behind me when I was going through kind of this rough transition period. And then when I started kind of breaking out and becoming, Chris Jericho that I became, he kind of, I think, took great pride in that, because I'm sure he stood up a lot of times when they were saying, this guy is the worst, or this guy sucks, or whatever, and he was probably saying, just give it time, like a good hockey coach will. If you get a number one draft choice and he comes in but he's still not ready, you see 3 years down the line, you don't see right now. And JR was that guy for me, so I always thought of him that way, and always will always remember that and never forget that for what he did for me when I first started.
Now, with the backstage politics, and, as wrestling fans, Dolph Ziggler's on a losing streak. Oh, there must be beef backstage. JR, retires. It's because of an incident that may have happened at SummerSlam at Fan Access. How much of that is true? I mean, do we buy too much into that? Do we read too much into that as fans, or is there some truth behind it?
Well, the thing is, I don't know either, because I'm not in the closed-door meetings. You know what I mean? Just by going of the track record of the WWE, they have an interesting way of doing things. I know for a fact that Vince didn't like me when I first came in, didn't like CM Punk when he first came in, or maybe just didn't see anything. Mm-hmm. Didn't see anything in Daniel Bryan when he first came in. And it takes a long time to kind of break down those walls, no pun intended. But there's still always, look at the Daniel Bryan thing. That's, we say, what's the term they used to use? Shooting on the square or working on the square, or whatever the heck it means. What it means is that it's... what they're saying is storyline, but it's probably coming from some real true life feelings, Mm-hmm. Daniel Bryan's too small, or he's too ugly, or whatever it may be. It goes against what kind of the verdict of what a WWE prototype superstar is. But so did I, and so did Shawn Michaels, and so did Bret Hart at the time, and so did CM Punk, and a lot of guys like that. Not everybody can be a John Cena or Dave Bautista or Hunter, guys that are like the perfect genetically created WWE guys. So, I'm sure there's a lot of things that happen because there's issues behind the scenes. I don't know what happened at the SummerSlam thing. I just heard about it. But obviously the fact that JR wasn't really doing much, I know he had a lot to do with developmental, he was already kind of on the outskirts. So maybe when that thing went down, whatever it may be, I bet you Vince didn't even see it. I'm sure he heard about it and kind of formed his opinions on that. Yeah. That's what happened with the flag kicking thing. He never even saw the footage of it. He just heard about it and assumed, had a mental picture in his mind, and that was it. You're suspended. Meanwhile, when you watch it back, I didn't even really do anything. You know, obviously I deserved it, but it wasn't like I went, "This flag sucks," and blew my nose on it and wiped my ass with it and threw it in the crowd. But so I think that if you're hearing about it, somebody in the company always stooges things off to the internet. It happens all the time. So, it's where there's smoke, there's fire. I'm sure there's some truth to what you're hearing, but that's just speculation on my part because I don't really know either.
It's interesting what you said before in terms of, you said shooting from the square was the term?
Yeah, we need to get Michaels or Austin or somebody. I think it's a worked shoot or shooting from the square. Or
the square route?
Well,
the square route,
We're kind of rebranding it now. We're calling it on our show the new Kayfabe because it really is the new iteration of Kayfabe in that we know that you guys play characters in the squared circle, and we know that you have real lives outside of the square circle. And now, Total Divas is taking this to the whole next level, in that you have two of the biggest stars in the company right now. Sure, you have Daniel Bryan on TV, but you have Bryan Danielson with Brie Bella. And it's changed the way we're trying to look at it, where you have the backstage stuff. You have, like you said, where there's smoke, there's fire, and then you have storyline and the blurring of the lines, making us guess, is there really beef? Is there really something going on here? Or is this storyline? It's almost the new kayfabe to a certain extent. Do you buy into that?
I think sometimes it confuses fans when you do too much insider stuff. I remember a couple years ago, before I came back in 2012, when Nash and Punk were having the feud, and they were saying stuff kind of similar. You're too small. You look like a fry cook. You'll never draw a dime. I think people sometimes don't understand what that really means. I think we kind of sometimes assume that people all read the sheets and read the internet, and I would say that probably 80% of the people don't. I'm a big music fan, and I read Billboard magazine and follow the charts and read the reviews and see what's going on, but I guarantee, 80% of the people that like music don't, or 80% of the people that go to movies don't read the box office, receipts every week. So I think, when you say Edge has never drawn a dime, and that's supposed to be a heat-getting line, I think that a lot of people don't know what never drawing a dime means, because, Edge was a 10-time world champion, so doesn't that mean he was good? He never drew a dime. What does that mean? Like, he never took a pencil and drew a circle and wrote 10 cents in the middle of it? Like, what does drawing a dime mean? So I think sometimes we assume that everybody knows as much about wrestling as we do.
Well, I was just going to say, they're going into the whole face of the company.
Yeah, face of the company with
That's
Daniel
not
Bryan.
a WWE term. That's really us saying, oh, well, John Cena's the face of the company.
Right. And telling people that, you're too small and you're too ugly and Big Show is broke, so he needs to work for this. It's kind of like if I'd been working in the WWE for 14 years and I was broke, something's wrong with me. Like, I don't want to cheer for Big Show if he's broke after 14 years. Like, what the hell were you spending all this money on? You know what I mean? Like, you're a world champion. You've been like, when I was a kid, I watched Stampede Wrestling and saw a guy like Goldie Rogers, who was an opening match job guy, and just thought, if I can be like Goldie Rogers, that's all I want. He's probably making $150,000 a year. Little did I know he was making $50 a night and probably getting ripped off. But to me, because he was on TV, he was a superstar and rich. That's what I think that we need to portray our WWE superstars are. It's like, when they're talking about the Intercontinental Championship and saying, the pre-show, let's say. Miz was on the pre-show of something, and he's like, I'm on the pre-show. I'm like, dude, it's like Fast Times at Ridgemont High when Damone talks to Rat and tells him, wherever you are, that's the place to be. And that's like, if you're on the pre-show, that's because this is going to be the biggest freaking pre-show you've ever seen in your life. This is the place to be.
Which they've rebranded to Kickoff.
To Kickoff, right, because they want to be important. And that's like, if you're fighting for the Intercontinental Championship, like the last one I had was against Curtis Axel. I wanted them to do in-ring introductions, and either they cut it before I went to the ring or somebody forgot to do it. But it's like, this is a title match on a network television show. Why are we not making this a big deal? I don't care if it's the Intercontinental Championship. It's a championship. It don't matter if it's the World Championship or the freaking Midget Championship. It should be treated as such. Because if we don't treat it as such, nobody else will. And it's the same thing with all these storylines that we're talking about. Daniel Bryan's small and ugly. I never noticed that. I don't know how big he is. I've never, you see guys in the ring, they all look the same size, unless you're Big Show or Rey Mysterio. He's got a beard. Okay, who cares? Like, okay, you're ugly. Well, who says he's ugly? I mean, maybe under that beard he's the hottest guy in the world. I don't know. But just sometimes they do things that I think they think is going to get heat, but I'm not so sure if it does get heat, So
it's weird because it's almost like there's no gray area. You look back to 2009, 2010, it was squarely sports entertainment, and we call it the Miz era, where it seemed to be not for the hardcore wrestling fan, where now it seems to be directed towards the hardcore wrestling fan with a lot of the backstage talk and everything else. Is there a gray area? Can you have that gray area in the WWE?
Well, I think what they're doing right now is making the best of what they have. I mean, obviously, Daniel Bryan is amazing. To me, he is literally the best in the world. I mean, Punk is great, but just Bryan is on a roll right now. Everything he does is just wow. I remember watching him when I was there, April, May, June, July, and just like, dude, everything you do, you're touching, everything you touch turns to gold. So I think, Vince is probably looking at it like, okay, well, how can we make this guy the biggest we can possibly make him? Let's try this. And Vince never loses. He'll make it work, and I'm sure the end result, at least I hope so, is that Daniel Bryan wins the title, and suddenly he's the face of the company until Cena can come back, and then maybe those two can go off and do something. So I think they're doing what they can do with what they have, and maybe they think that's the best way to do it. Okay, well, Daniel Bryan, he's smaller than what we usually have, and he's quote-unquote uglier than we usually have, so let's focus on that and see if we can turn the fans into liking him even more. It's like Ryback being the crybaby. I mean, Vince didn't just try that. He literally believed that was going to take him to the next level. And then when it wasn't, he changed him to a bully and then believes that's going to take him to the next level. And if it doesn't, he'll change. Like, Vince is in control. He always knows what he's doing, and he always wins in the end. So he will keep pushing someone until they get over, and they will.
That is kind of the problem, because you're right. Vince wins in the end. And to a certain extent, everybody is a spoke on Vince's wheel. But
of course,
I remember you coming in. I wasn't even on the show, but I've watched the video 1,000 times with you and Riker, and you were talking about how, now's the time for Ryback. Let's go. Ryback's hot. This is obviously when Cena was injured last year. Ryback was in his place, and he was moving, and you're like, this is the time to push the button on Ryback. That didn't happen. Things happen obviously for a bunch of reasons, but like you said, crybaby, bully, inconsistency in character. How hard is it when you keep changing? There was, I remember you've said this on our show before a couple times. If you're given a bag of crap, you got to make that bag of crap the greatest of all time. You got to kick in the door and make your opportunities happen. But if things keep changing, if the game keeps changing on you, how are you supposed to really get to that next level?
That's a question that you have to just deal with yourself. There's no hand-holding and coddling in the WWE. This is the big leagues, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of guys are having problems getting over now, because they don't have the experience to know how to duck, dodge, dive, and dip when things are thrown their way. That's one of the reasons why when I got there and things weren't going the way that I wanted it to, I had to make some changes and morph it. And I knew from my 9 years of experience of getting over that I'd do it. I knew how to get over. If I could do it in Mexico and Japan, I can do it here. If I could do it in ECW or whatever. Same in WCW. I was nothing until I figured out a way to get over. That's why everybody that came in that had experience eventually did it. Eddie did it. Benoit did it. Mysterio did it. Punk did it. I knew from the moment Daniel Bryan walked through the door he was going to get over, because he'd done it before. I don't care. Oh, he got over in a bingo hall in Philly. Don't matter. You still got over in front of the hardest fans in the world to get over in front of. If you can do that, you always have a wealth of experiences to go back into and say, like, gosh, nothing is working, but there was this one thing that I did or saw, 8 years ago in Mexico, something Negro Casas did, and I think it might work. And you try it and say, oh, that works, so I got one thing that works. A lot of guys don't have it. So how does Ryback get over with all these? I don't know, man. That's up to Ryback to figure out and try. Not everybody is going to make it into the Hall of Fame. That's the hard, cold truth of life. You have to have some wherewithal within yourself to get there. Steve Austin being a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like when you're up on stage with Fozzy. If the crowd's not into what you're doing, you got to change the setup.
That's exactly right. How do we change this? Because there's nothing worse than you could have the best match or the best show in the world. I could sing every note clean, be perfectly in tune, and if the crowd is dead, I failed. I could have the perfect match, every move was great and graceful, and everything was cool, and if the crowd is dead, you failed. You could have a crappy match that screw up everything, botch everything, hit 100 clams vocally in a live show, and if the crowd is going nuts, who cares? David Lee Roth never had a great show in 1985, but you always remember Van Halen being at their peak then. He missed all his notes. He was bad.
Doesn't matter.
Forgot lyrics. Didn't even care. I just forgot the words. He'd even tell you, I forgot the words. It doesn't matter. It's live. And all that matters is connecting with the crowd. So Ryback needs to connect with the crowd in whatever, and I think he will, because he's not a big dumb idiot. He's a very smart and
he's a thoughtful
receptive
guy.
and thoughtful and
Yeah.
perceptive, so he'll get it. You know what I mean? It's just a matter. You just have to learn who you are as a performer and what you have to do as a performer to make it work and stay within that wheelhouse.
You said that like right now the WWE is doing the best with what they have. John Cena's out. A lot of the part timers. You're out. The part timers that are there for WrestleMania aren't available. And then I look at, you're probably not going to be able to answer this question, but I look at TNA, and and they're having a pay-per-view, a free pay-per-view on TV last night in St. Louis, and there's barely 1,000 people. Like, it just seems like whatever they try, it just falls flat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think even if they were able to get a John Cena over somehow, some way, it would still fail.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you looking at TNA from the outside, what are they doing wrong?
Well, I mean, it's just it's hard to be the number 2 company in such a small market as far as wrestling fans. I mean, wrestling fans. There's let's, I don't know, 10 million across the states. And if you're a wrestling fan, you're gonna go. If we want a fast food burger and we're hungry, and there's a McDonald's here, and there's Arthur's Burgers here, and Arthur's Burgers is the best. Everyone tells you it's the best. McDonald's, we know it. Let's just go here. WWE is the name in pro wrestling. So TNA is already behind the 8 ball. So they would have to do something completely different the way that ECW did in 94, 95. But there's nothing you can really do different anymore because everything has been seen and been done. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it just shocks me because being like a metal fan, like you're a big Kiss fan, but you know what? You bought Halloween records, you bought Grim Reaper,
Yeah.
in the 80s when I started watching wrestling, I watched everything. I watched Georgia, I watched the WWF, I watched Mid-Atlantic. It just seems
you're right.
now.
I mean, I think maybe one of the things is it just comes across as kind of a retread. When I turn it on and see, a Bischoff or Hogan or Sting in this day and age, you're automatically thinking that, okay, well, this is the old guys league. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what they do, it still relies on those guys. And the only way they could really do it is if they came up with some new guys that just popped huge, that completely different, that didn't come from WWE, because all their main stars came from WWE, like Jeff Hardy and Angle, Bubba. They're great performers, all of them. I mean, Bubba's probably doing the best work of his career right now, but still, he's Bubba Ray Dudley. He's always going to be that.
Yeah. You
You need to get some other guy that comes from nowhere that maybe gets turned down by the WWE Performance Center because they didn't like his look, and then suddenly he becomes the next Rey Mysterio or the next John Cena or the next Mick Foley or somebody that just completely changes the way things go. But also, even if you had that guy, you need to get the eyeballs attracted to it to make it roll. So it's a tough position to be in. I don't envy what they're doing, and they don't take a lot of chances. And there's a lot of stuff that, like, I don't watch the show, but the Bound for Glory, and he's got 18 points and he's got 15 points, and it's a 12-week tournament. It's like, who has time to follow that stuff? When I watch wrestling, I don't want to think. I just want to enjoy it. I don't want to do mathematical equations and figure out that this. I can understand a red robin or a round robin. These guys, I can understand a red robin much better. But if there's a round robin where here's your brackets, da 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 da, that I can get. But if you win or you DQ'd and you get 5 points and 12 points, it's like I don't get it. I'm gonna just go watch something, put on Seinfeld instead or whatever it is.
You mentioned the WWE Performance Center, and clearly for WWE business, aces, amazing. For independent wrestling and for the industry on a whole, is the WWE Performance Center a good thing or a bad thing?
All I know is when I went to the Full Sail to do it, I couldn't believe how awesome it was. It was like I trained in a bowling alley, a pink bowling alley where the ceiling was like this one, where if you jumped up too high, you could put your head through it. And this was like everything was electronic and HD, and they had, promo area and weightlifting area and conditioning area and 17 rings, and they're training the cameramen, they're training the producers, they're training everybody's being trained. Yeah, it's not just the guys in the ring, it's announcers, it's cable runners, it's cameramen, it's production guys. So it's a whole, like, this amazing training ecosystem where you could just go in there and learn everything. And I was thinking, I actually talked to all the students or whoever you want to call them afterwards and said, like, this is, you guys need to cherish this. Don't think that it's always been like this, and don't think it's like this anywhere else. This is special. So I think it's the smartest thing they could have done. It's a great idea by Hunter. But he said, we don't want any independent guys coming in anymore because they got too many bad habits. I think that will probably change if there's certain guys out there because most of the good guys on the roster came from other places.
Seriously. They brought in Sammy Callahan.
It's
Chris. I mean, come on. I mean, bad habits. The guys, you wrestled with a lot of those guys those kind of guys back in the day. They're going to have to break that guy with bad habits, but they saw the talent in him.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's the way it is now, man. Things have changed. This is not the wrestling that we knew 5 years ago. Even it's not. It's gonna continue to change, and more and more of the old guard guys are going to be retired or moved to other positions. You can see it. Jane Getty's head of talent relations. She's from a golfing, right? Like a pro golfing thing. That was always a job held by a former wrestler who knew the ins and outs. This is becoming, they're going full on corporate. And that's the way that the WWE is going to be. It's going to morph into that. And like it or don't like it, it's the way it is. So I guess we'll see how the Performance Center does, who they turn out that are new stars. And most of the guys that are stars are guys that came from other places. So, and if you can't get into the Performance Center, what do? Hey, man, it took me 9 years to get in the WWE. Don't give me a sob story. Go out there and find a way. That's what I did. So I can't go say, well, the Performance Center is a bad idea because it took me 9 years to even get a look from those guys. Cover of magazines, 5-star matches, match of the years, blah, blah, blah. They couldn't give a shit. 9 years. So that's what you have to deal with. It's not easy. Guys that get in the WWE after 6 months are like Ashton Kutcher booking that 70s show in his first audition. It doesn't happen too often, and you should feel lucky if you get it, but don't blow it.
Looking at you, you're in. How do you stay in tremendous shape? I'm looking at you like
he is a stud.
Dude. He's like your muscles are bulging while you're talking. How do you stay in such great shape? How do you stay in such great shape being on the road?
I think we talked about it before. It's started with dancing, Dancing with the Stars. I lost a lot of weight. Then the DDP yoga is the only way I train now. I don't go to the gym anymore. And diet, it's just complete paleo diet. No processed foods, no sugars, no sandwich meat, nothing like that. It's all berries and nuts and meat. It's a very boring way to eat, but it's what I do. And I lost 30 pounds since 3 years ago. September of 2010, wow. I weighed 230 pounds, and if you look at pictures of that time, it's like I was fat, and you don't notice it, but it was starting to get to that point where I'm gonna either end up like Big Van Vader.
Oh, come on.
Or I need to do something, and then it's been cool. So like I said, dude, every night when we play, it's nonstop sweat. It's like the craziest aerobic exercise that you can do, and we're doing 45 minutes a night on this tour, and I think we have maybe 4 nights off over the next 5 weeks. So you just stay in shape. That's how you do it.
I got excited for a second because you said palea. I thought you said paella. I was like, I can do that. Paella every night. I can do that.
This guy gets his workouts on the stage. If you want to see him tonight, BB King's Fozzy. It's going to be, now it's Fozzy and, I'm not a rock.
Saxon.
Yeah,
Saxon.
So Saxon's the old school.
Saxon is like a very influential, legendary band, influenced Metallica and Maiden and huge around the world. The first U.S. tour in a few years, but they were an arena band here years ago, and this is the first time coming back, so it's really cool to be with them.
Bottom line, you're not coming to see Saxon. You're coming to see Fozzy. www.fozzyrock.com. Tonight at BB King, 7 p.m., 42nd Street between 6th and 7th. Dave, I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm going to be there, man.
I know.
I'm going to do the stage. All right, real quick, because we had Mickey
Wall of
J.
Death.
Do not do the Wall of Death.
I'm going to definitely do
But
it.
just by himself.
I said, I'm just going to be by myself. Look at me.
People think he's a
That
bum
is
off
me.
the street. Yeah.
Just have him removed from the arena.
Were you at the Gramercy last year?
Yeah, I was there.
So this is like
man.
your third time you've seen us.
Yes,
Okay,
dude.
cool.
I'm not no newbie, man.
Well, I know, man. You know your stuff. You always, when the Sin and Bones came out, you texted me and said you really enjoyed it.
Yeah, dude, definitely. And you texted me those pictures, so I can't wait for the show. All right, real quick, because I asked Mickey
Which
James.
pictures? The naked ones?
Not the no. Listen, dude. I didn't think you were going to bring those up.
Sorry. Is this thing on?
Yeah.
Oh, we're still in the air.
All right. Song you wish you wrote.
Yesterday, because it's the biggest song of all time, and I'd be super rich right now.
All right, give me like a. All right,
Enter Sandman.
Give me like a Enter Sandman.
I think Enter Sandman has been played so many times, you get like sick of it, and it's just kind of oh my God, here's Enter Sandman again. But I don't think there's been a better heavy rock metal song ever written because it's perfect. It's a perfect rock and roll song. It's a perfect heavy metal song. Perfect amalgamation of the two. And to this day, whenever you hear that riff, it just makes you want to jump up and down and punch someone in the face in a good way. Lovingly punch someone in the face.
Makes me think about Mariano Rivera, too. The greatest closer of all time in baseball comes out to Enter Sandman his entire
I don't know anything
career.
about baseball. You're like Mariano Rivera. I'm like, is that a supermodel? Reminds me of the night I was with Mariano Rivera.
He is literally one of the great pitchers of all time, New York Yankees, and he comes out to
There you go.
he's the Sandman.
I am the worst sports fan of all time. And the worst athlete of all time. The only thing I'm good at is wrestling. I'm terrible at hockey. I play football with my son, and I drop the ball. I'm the worst. I am a bad athlete, but
well, he went from Madden to Don Cherry.
Yeah,
before.
well, that's
that
it.
was
I actually the Madden thing impressed me. All right, one more.
But I almost said Mark Madden. I had to stop myself.
Okay.
We would have cut you off on that one. Trust me.
All right, best Canadian trio. Now you can't.
Best
No,
Canadian
wait
trio.
a second. Obviously, you can't use Rush. So I'm going to give you two choices: Triumph or Raven.
Well, Raven's from England.
Are they really? They're
Yeah.
not. Oh,
They're from. Somebody said you got to rap. Got to rap. This is my show tonight, brother. I'll rap when I'm
All right,
ready.
Raven or Triumph.
Well, I mean, I loved Raven. I love Raven. Triumph was cool, but Rick Emmett's voice bothered me. Raven. I'm going with Raven.
All right.
You?
Raven.
Triumph. Raven. Nice.
Make it easy. Fozzy Rock, BB King's tonight. Chris Jericho, the one and only. Thanks, brother.
See you there.